Yeah, you read the title right. There is no game out there like ATLUS' latest release, Metaphor ReFantazio, and I don't think we'll be seeing a game like it for a long time to come. So why is that? Well, for one, it's just incredible. But the other reason what makes it so special is the way Metaphor presents its themes. They're themes that many games have tried to touch upon, but don't quite pull it off the way ATLUS have here. I mean, I could yap about all the cool gameplay elements, art direction, characters, job system, or quest design, but I think most people have already come to know ATLUS' way they design their games. However, in the story and theme department, yeah, I think this was the biggest step up for me personally compared to what I've played from their previous titles. I mean, mostly everything in Metaphor is a big step up in my opinion, but that's just me. So, light spoilers for Metaphor ReFantazio, as I'll be trying to be as vague as possible when talking about some stuff that appears later in the game, but for the most part, I'll try my best to stick to stuff you'll be seeing in the early stages of this fantasy. And also, I'm still not done with the game, I'm just over halfway through it, so let's call this an early impressions video. Anyways, let's get to it. The first major thing that stood out to me when playing Metaphor was that the game felt a lot more mature. The game is rated teen, but a lot of the topics and themes that the game conveys are heavy stuff, and you realize it pretty quickly because oppression is the binding factor between Metaphor's core antagonistic themes, that being discrimination and manipulation. These themes here aren't uncommon in the world of video games, however, there aren't many games that go to the full length to highlight these issues and the consequences that arise from problems like this. At best, the closest games that I feel make a real noteworthy attempt at bringing these issues to light are Papers, Please and How You Are in a Way Forced to Be a Part of the Problem, and the little that I've played in The Witcher 3 in the ways that Geralt, the main character, is treated by others. Metaphor from its opening makes it clear that we, as a people, can learn a lot from fantasy despite how unrealistic the concepts within fantasy stories can be. At the start, the narrator of the game says that fantasy comes from hope of making the world a better place, meaning that that hope itself can be manifest. That's a pretty inspirational quote if you ask me, because if you can dream of something to come true, that dream can become a reality. And I have to say, the way Metaphor goes about presenting this is really genius, because in the world of Metaphor ReFantazio, there's a book that the protagonist has, which is a fantasy novel depicting a utopia, a perfect society, peace. Every so often, one of the main party members asks to read with the protagonist a bit, learning how all the people live in equality and care for one another in this novel, and every time they remark how impossible it would be for their current world to become that utopian world. And they're right for thinking so and being this pessimistic based on how oppressive the United Kingdom of Ukrainia is, which is the name of Metaphor's world. I have not played a game where nearly every single moment my main character is being judged for being Elda, one of the worst tribes in the eyes of many from this world, or seeing down upon other tribes such as the Parapus and Mustari, who are severely mistreated. It's heavy stuff and it's sad to say, but I do think that there are many people in our world who are being treated like that. What makes this even harder to talk about is how systematic this tribal order is. A lot of times in games, characters that come from different places who end up being mistreated together feel sympathy for one another, but that's not the case here. Bar the main cast, tribes that are looked down upon also fight amongst each other, and this stretches all the way up this hierarchical order. Why? Because in the end, one of mankind's greatest weaknesses is that want for power. And why do people want power? Because a lot of times, people just struggle to tolerate or emphasize with others, leading to the struggle for control. In the world of Metaphor, the central power rests with the king, until he is literally unalived in the opening cinematic by this Luis fella who wants to claim the title of king. However, if I got it right, the king was a major player in the state church, meaning that the church and their values have a strong chokehold, if you can call it, over the kingdom. But instead of just letting the church gain control, the king uses magic before dying to set up a contingency plan where the person who gets the most support of the people by the king's predetermined election day becomes king. And this whole election process really highlights the means that people will use to get to power. Candidates who want to use brute force to fight for their own tribes, using power to punch down on the lower tribes or put pressure on the higher ups. Yet in all of this, the state church here uses their hierarchical stance to manipulate the election process. They control how the election should proceed and have multiple people in the running to overshadow other candidates, making it basically rigged from the start. Now, although I do think that the game might be criticizing religion, which, I mean, it is, it's also making strong commentary on the people's struggle for power. How often do we see people in higher positions abuse powers and those below them to remain in power? Sadly, a lot. Just like with the issue of discrimination the game brings up, it's a prevalent issue in our world. I don't like getting political as I just want to talk about video games on this channel, but we've got these issues worldwide and throughout our history. Racism and prejudice is something that still plagues us today by premeditated actions or people who unintentionally don't think their actions through. And the same goes for that struggle for power, where a lot of times people just want to say what they believe will get them the popular vote. So although I do love the way that the game looks in terms of its art direction and style, the opening areas have this somber and harsh tone to them. Grand Trad, the royal capital in particular, seeing so many people live together in this massive city, yet having so much tension between its folk that it can be cut with a knife. It's a very sad sight. But although these are the core issues that plague the world of Metaphor, we really get to see the consequences they have on their regular citizens through the follower quests, Metaphor's take on Persona's social link system, and through other characters you see in the story. You've got Brigida, a merchant who cares for a weak puppy that was cast aside, reminding herself of her younger self being cast aside and mistreated, or in Hulkenberg's quest, seeing how a former knight abuses his power to execute anyone that defies his order. Metaphor does not tread lightly around the consequences of the systematic issues in place, because you really do get to see how much pain, hurt, and anger the people around you house. There are of course some hubs where people are more optimistic, like the Honeybee Inn, where upon multiple visits the regulars grow on you and hope you win that race for king. I guess that does show that no matter how dark the world may appear to be, there will always be a bright light shining out somewhere. However, a lot of these sparks of hope are from the people who decide to take on the world in their own distorted ways. It's a bit sad to see many of the people in the story blindly follow the Sanctus Church, where many are also too afraid to even question their power. Of course, there is one big opposition to the Sanctus Church, that being Luis, the main antagonist of the game. And Luis is a character that I want to delve deeper into in a fully fledged video, but let me just say now, as a preview of what I'll say then, is that this man is a really great villain. I mean, yeah, he is pretty evil, but this guy has some motivations that can make sense in an echo chamber with some hard quotes. The hardest quote that he says that really made me appreciate his character a lot more is at the halfway point when he says,
"Defies reason. All people deserve the chance to fight for their lives with their lives. Some will fall, some will triumph, and therein is true equality forged, however cruel."
Now, obviously, I do disagree with this sentiment, as there are a lot of loopholes and plot holes if you follow this mindset to a T, but therein lies a spark of hope for many that suffer in this world. Instead of just having money and power to keep a status quo, by changing the way one should live based on the power and value they have in their own power to live, that drastically changes things. Some might just try their best, whilst others will cheat and find ways to overcome anything, no matter how unfair their methods may be. And that idea of honor and putting your life on the line is actually discussed fairly heavily in one of the follower quests. Even though Luis speaks of true equality and does manage to sway many people to his side with sheer power, it's not a peaceful world or idea that he has, because violence and discrimination would still thrive in his dream of equality, and the cycle of violence would continue. Yet, despite all this negativity, the world seeming like it's just getting worse, your protagonist and his friends face the world head on. They don't just get this motivation from their own personal experiences, but also from that book. Fantasy can teach us and enlighten us in how we can improve and do better. Again, paraphrasing that opening quote, because fantasy does inspire them to manifest their dreams. Your group of friends, Stroll, Hulkenberg, and others, are all from very different tribes, each having experienced the oppressive system in some shape or form, yet they overcome this and their own personal demons and move forward. One of the early moments in the game that really hooked me on this grand story was Stroll's awakening to his archetype. First, Archetypes. Archetypes is basically a job/class system where the characters can change the way they fight, from the likes of being a warrior to a thief, and the way they unlock these powers is when they've discovered their purpose, what they're fighting for. And Stroll's is the first one to awaken to his power, not including the protagonist. I can tell you that I got goosebumps seeing it. Stroll, learning the truth of why his whole village was burnt down, standing up to the guy in charge of doing it, is inspiring.
My name is Leon Stroll de Halliatus. My home and my family were taken from me. I am the last of my house. I am the last of my noble bloodline. And in the name of my people, I will strike you down where you stand!
This guy has lost his family, friends, everyone he cared for, yet still, he stands up to those that wronged him and keeps fighting for a better world, a just world, where everyone can be given an equal chance to live. As the game keeps going on, more people join your party, and each one of them awakens to their archetype for so many different reasons. Seeing people dishonor core values, not overcoming their losses, and learning hard truths. Everyone has a sound reason why they want to fight for change. Seeing your party help many struggling people in this world, and seeing your ranks in the election rise from being a nobody to an actual candidate to being king really hammers home how much a single person can change the world with the right intentions. And that's another thing Metaphor wants to make clear, the idea of coming together. A lot of people have already noted the Esperanto influence is strong throughout the game from its music and item names and the like, but it's super important. Esperanto is a language that was created back in the 19th century as a language that unites many of the core European languages, and as of right now, it's probably the language that does the best job at uniting people through a language that doesn't sacrifice their previous language being lost. And that theme of unity, seen in your party of many different backgrounds, is a strong symbol of hope that in the end, we are all people. Regardless of where we come from, regardless of who we were, regardless of who we are people, and together we can make greater changes, just like the party in Metaphor is making a greater change for their world. Even if everything I've said here is just a mere fantasy, that doesn't mean we can't learn from it to do better. I'll say it again, but we can learn a lot from fantasy. Seeing the heroics of your favorite heroes, the way they learn, adapt, and overcome their hardships, and fight for what they see as right, means that you can do the same. Although I don't mean this literally, cause I don't think you should dress up as a knight or a mage and just go around doing high fantasy activities to change the world, but you can do something small. Every day you can fight for a change. Fantasy can help open your eyes to see some of your mistakes that you've made, and you can do small things to change the way you perceive the world and help others too. I have to go back and quote a line from another Atlus game, Persona 3, you don't have to save the world to find meaning in life. Sometimes all you need is something simple, like someone to take care of. And if you ask me, that's beautiful. Metaphor ReFantazio is a landmark title in gaming in my opinion. It's a special game that I think everyone should play, and I do think we can learn a lot about ourselves and way of life by understanding the game's themes. I think I'll end the video here, so thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video, and I really do hope you enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section, and a like, subscribe, and a dislike all help the channel out too. But above all, just to end this off, fantasy is a powerful medium that isn't limited to the confines of the imagination, and so too should we live. And with that, Storm out.